What's going on, everyone? I'm Travis Brown with the Eagle, and it's the QB room time again with Nick Starkel, former Texas A&M quarterback and passing game coordinator over there at Corona Del Mar High School. How do we do this week?
We did great this past week. Beat Huntington Beach High School, a league game, got us a playoff berth, and so we've got first round of CIF Division IV playoffs tonight versus Paraclete High School here in our home stadium. Weird Thursday night game, short week, but we feel like we're ready to go.
Nice, and sent the seniors off on a good note.
Exactly. Yeah, senior night last week, had a great one. I enjoyed celebrating those guys, and we knew, hey, if we play correctly and then we win this game, that it won't be our last one. So we're happy to have another week.
Awesome. Well, I know we talked a little bit about this on a previous episode, I think, before Tennessee, just away environments, and it's a good point about what does an away trip look like for a football player. A lot of talk about bringing your own energy and things like that when it gets to the field, but what is that experience like for a college football player going on the road, as A&M is going to do this weekend, heading out to Oxford to play Ole Miss?
Yeah, I think that there's two pieces that are probably the most important in terms of going to an away game and how you approach it. The first one is the physical approach. How do you make sure that your guys are physically ready to go? If you're flying to Oxford, you're not just flying straight there. You're flying into Memphis and then you're taking a bus ride for an hour and a half or something. So it's a lot of time just kind of sitting there after, a tough week of practices, workouts, and classes. And so you've got to physically be ready to go. You got to make sure that when you get out, out of that plane or off that bus, that you're kind of going into a stretch, sometimes even a little bit of movement, like you almost warm up like you would before practice in the hotel, which is sometimes a little strange with a lot of people watching you, but usually you've got a ballroom or something that you can go do some movement in, find the athletic trainers kind of to-go station and get in there, get some recovery going. Some guys, they'd have the pass to go in and, hey, I'm going to go get in the hot tub and I'm going to stretch, make sure that everything's all good. I'm feeling good for the next day. The second aspect of that is the mental aspect, which is probably the most important, is can you lock in an away environment? You're not sleeping in your bed. You're sleeping at a hotel that you don't even know really what city you're in because you didn't GPS to get there or anything. And, eating food from that place, how are you going to stay nutritionally balanced? And then sometimes if you got an afternoon or a night game, you've got a lot of time in that hotel. And so with Coach Sumlin, we would travel on a Friday night and we'd get there and we'd usually have a team movie or something. And then we'd go back to the hotel, real quick meetings, send you off to bed, get up in the morning, breakfast, some more meetings, kind of getting mentally correct, all your walkthroughs, and then you go to the game. With Coach Fisher, we started leaving on Thursdays. Leaving on Thursdays, I think, was a huge advantage for us because now we're used to the schedule. We're not running around on game day trying to find where's that ballroom that we're supposed to be meeting in. You had that Thursday night where you kind of got to lay the land. You knew where everything was. And then you have all day Friday. Friday, if you've got online classes or if you've got homework that you got to work on, papers that you have to write, tests that you have to take online, you get to do all of that. And then in your free time, you get to go have a little bit extra time in the film room. You get to have a little bit more extra time on, hey, let's talk about our third down packages and what we really like in third and short. And you take advantage of those times that you have with those coaches where there's not really a lot of distractions. It's just you guys in that hotel. Family might come by and stop, say hi a little bit, but you're really just locked into that game. And so I think mentally it gave us a lot more space to get prepared and ready to go out and play an opponent on the road because we had that full extra 24 hours there. And then you also got that same game day schedule where you're getting up, final little meetings. Let's talk about this one more time, walk through, and then you're going to the game. So I was a huge fan of traveling on Thursdays. I think that was great for the program. And I think that a lot of teams are going to start adapting that style as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's pretty well documented. A&M is on a 8-game losing skid on true road games heading into this game. So there's got to be some challenges. What are some of the challenges, not only in kind of the preparation, but like when you get on the field, because there is something kind of going wrong here as they haven't really won on those road games.
I think the first thing that I always did that helped me, and I think helped the rest of our team, was eliminate the distractions. You know, sometimes those can come from within your own family, as bad as that does sound. And so hey, we've got away tickets. You got to figure out, okay, who's going to the game? Well, how am I going to see them? How am I going to do this? And I came up with the set thing. I learned about it my freshman year from Trevor Knight and those older quarterbacks of, hey, look, you've got Friday night in the hotel. You can see your family then for like 30 minutes to an hour. Just hang out with them in the lobby, spend some time with them, no distractions, be able to kind of let go of everything, hang out with them that day. And then when it is game day, hey, look, this is game day. This is all we're focusing on. And so, I would encourage players to come up with a method of that. Like, hey, I am going to take my time. I'm going to spend it with my family. They came all the way out here to see me play, or maybe it's some family and friends that are closer to this away game and they came into town. Spend that time with them, the night before the game or 2 nights before the game if you're there a little earlier, and really embrace that, be able to let go for a little bit. And then when it is time to go, it's time to lock in. One of the other biggest challenges obviously is the crowd. And a lot of guys, they'll go into that game and they'll have their headphones in, they'll have their big beats on, and they'll walk into the stadium, they'll start their warm up, and they won't hear or feel the energy of an environment until it is lights are on and we're out there in pregame stretch, padded up and everything. And for a lot of guys, that's overstimulating, and that's a lot at once. Now it's like a deafening crowd kind of roar. For me, I would get into a stadium and I would go no headphones, no earphones, nothing, and I would hear it from whenever they hadn't let anybody in the stadium all the way up until that is max capacity right before kickoff, the loudest it's going to be. And it allowed me to almost drowned out the noise. I got to drown out the noise like sleeping with a creaky fan. When you first turn that thing on, you hear it and you notice it. And then, 30 minutes into it, an hour into it, you don't hear that fan anymore. And all of a sudden you're sleeping all the way through the night and you've got a creaky fan going. But it's just part of what's going on, and you no longer hear it. And I think that is definitely a technique that I use that other players have used as well to help navigate kind of a crowd noise and a different environment like that.
Yeah, of course. How much do you hear the crowd, hear individual things that are said? I mean, I know the press conference answer is, we block everything out. But how much can you hear stuff like that as the game goes on? You throw an interception, you miss a tackle, you come back on the bench. Is it still you got the mechanism on, or can there be holes in that?
There are definitely times where crowd noise and the things said are a huge advantage for a home team and a pretty big disadvantage for an away team. Probably the most distracting thing that opposing crowd can do is when you are on the sideline after a drive or something, and they're just chirping you nonstop right there on the bench. And especially like Ole Miss, they are right behind you. Mm-hmm. And you're on that bench, you're trying to listen to your offensive coaches, and you've got 10 guys that are just chirping, you guys shouldn't even go out there on offense. Like, this is the worst offense we've ever seen. Like, why don't you throw another interception? And you do hear those things, and some of those things are hilarious. Some of the things that have been yelled at me from the first or second row right behind an opposing bench have just made me like crack up laughing. And so I would have to grab a towel, put it over my face, and not show that I was laughing at them, because some of those guys are pretty clever, and they're college age guys, and they're just having fun at a football game, and they've probably been drinking a little bit. So they are comedic at some points, but sometimes I've seen some guys where it really gets into their head. And so I think that is an opportunity for me as a teammate to look over and say, hey man, these guys, they don't know what they're talking about. Let's lock in right here, right now. or hey, let's get up off of the bench, get a little bit away from them. Let's go lock in on what the defense is doing right now. I think it's important for players to see, hey, these guys, they're kind of getting after us right now, chirping us a little bit on the sideline. So hey, let's get away from that. Let's go lock back into what's going on, in the game. And I think that that's a hard switch for some guys because they'll hear something said to them and they'll be like, hey, that was pretty personal, and then they'll all of a sudden start battling with those guys behind them rather than focusing on the battle on the field that's going on. I think that is a huge obstacle to overcome, and that's why they preach the whole time like, hey, look, it's just noise. We don't hear it. We don't pay attention to any of it. But in practice, it's hard to actually practice those things of saying, look, I don't care what's going on behind me. I'm focusing on the game.
Well, that begs the question, because I was maybe going to wait later in the video, but I got to ask it now. What are some of the funniest chirps you've heard that you can say on a family-friendly video?
Right. Right. I've heard a couple times, Starkel, you might as well just punt it because you're going to turn the ball over. Oh, gosh. Sometimes the worst chirps are when it's your own fans chirping at you. And I was at a university where I had already thrown a couple of interceptions. And I think that people are going to know which game I'm talking about. But there was a fan, and he goes, Starkel, do you realize your own receivers are wearing red? Don't throw it to the other team. And I was just dying laughing because I was like, man, he's got a point. I have thrown a couple of interceptions here. It does look like I'm playing for the wrong team, but I hear some good ones there. Specifically, and I might have already talked about this, specifically at Ole Miss pregame, just hearing those guys out there. I mean, I don't even know how they were in the stadium. We had still like an hour and 20 minutes till kickoff, and we're just warming up. And they're chirping Christian Kirk and I, and they were just getting after us. And C. Kirk was like, "Hey, let one go a little high and make sure it lands in the crowd against these guys." And so we've done that a couple of times. But honestly, it's one of the coolest things ever. I love, as much as I love playing at Kyle Field, there's not a stadium in the world better than Kyle Field. Like, that's hands down. That is the best stadium in college football. The environment, everything there, being able to play in front of a student section like that is one of a kind. And as much as I love playing at Kyle Field, we loved going on away games and being the bad guys. Like, it's just a change. It's just a change in mentality and a switch of, hey, we're going into someone else's territory. We're the bad guys here. No matter what, we're not going to hear a lot of good things. Let's embrace that. And let's go against these guys, and let's see if we can get that crowd to just silent. And I loved that opportunity. I loved going into, a place like South Carolina, a place like Ole Miss or Mississippi State, and after hearing the cowbells for the whole first half, all of a sudden the cowbells are real quiet. They're like, all right, here we go, mission accomplished. Let's finish the job. But I think you got to embrace that. You got to like playing these road games because you don't get to do this the rest of your life. You don't get to go be the bad guy where 60,000 fans are booing you when you walk out of the tunnel. And I think that it's a really unique opportunity.
And you bring up a good point there. That was going to kind of be my next question is, one of the away game cliches is you got to bring your own energy. Is that kind of where that comes from? Make that a little bit more tangible for me if you can, because I think everybody kind of understands, well, yeah, you're not going to have your fans, so you got to do, but what does that look and feel like?
Yeah, that is probably the most important part of an away game is bringing your own energy. And you're not going to rely on it. A big play happens at home and the crowd is roaring. Everyone's standing to their feet. Everyone knows it's a huge down. You feed off of that energy the same way you should feed off of an opposing crowd getting really loud for you. Offensively, it's 3rd and long and their defense is going crazy. Their whole sideline's up and everyone's to their feet in the stadium. Well, it's also an opportunity for you to go out and shut that down. And so offensively, we're on our feet when our defense is out there and we're getting these guys going. We're fired up. you almost have to be like a secondary cheerleader on the sideline for your defense when they're up there, because it's a quiet stadium and you want that defense to, get off the field, make them punt the ball. And so you're firing up your guys, you're smacking guys on the helmet after they make a big play. You're celebrating on the sideline more than you would at a home game, because you want those guys to feel the energy of, hey, I'm doing this for all of my teammates here, and this is it. Like, the guys that are here on this trip are the only guys that we're worried about right now. And then for our fans at home and for the guys that traveled there with us, it's a huge aspect of bringing your own energy. Is, hey, when our team's on defense, I'm not sitting on the sideline and letting the crowd get after them. I'm going to go up there and get these guys up, get them going, fired up after they make a play. I'm the first one celebrating with them and stuff. That's really all it is. And so it takes those leaders on the team to say, hey, let's get off our butts on the sideline. Let's go cheer on these guys, because all we got is us right here. It's on us to bring that energy up.
Sure. So going back a little bit to the hotel and the stuff before, one thing that's always had my curiosity. So if you'll have a night game, are guys getting up and watching College Game Day like the rest of the world? Are y'all getting peeks in? I know y'all have meetings and stuff. Are you getting peeks in here, there, and other games? What is that like, or is it like completely tuned out?
We definitely watch other college games.
Yeah.
We are big College Game Day guys. We find the top games, whether it's a big noon kickoff or it's a big SEC matchup that we want to watch. You always have those certain games that you want to watch, especially if it's an opponent that's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Like if there was a night game on Saturday and Bama and LSU are playing earlier in the day, and we know, hey, we've got LSU later in the season, we are watching that, and we're watching it with a purpose. We're seeing, hey, which guy is, who's their guys, what fronts are they running, how are they handling, man coverage, what's the leverage in man coverage and stuff. So you're always you're watching it with a purpose. You're getting a piece of what's going on, and then also, like you watch College Game Day. Are these guys for us or are they against us? Sadly, more often than not, I feel like they're against Texas A&M, and so it's always like, all right, let's go prove these guys wrong tonight. We got the night game, and all these commentators are saying that they're going to smoke us, or we got one guy that's rooting for us, and let's go out, let's prove these guys wrong. And so we would do that. We would go wake up early, got breakfast with Coach Fisher. You have a morning walk, and so the whole team get out. We're in our our tracksuits, and we go for a morning walk just to get outside, feel the air, feel the temperature. If it's raining or something, feel that rain a little bit. Then you're back in, got a quick couple of meetings. And then you've got some free time. You've probably got like 4 or 5 hours just to kind of chill, kick back. Some guys go back, take a nap. I'd probably take like a 30-minute nap, get up, watch some football, make sure I'm staying hydrated, stretch a little bit. A bunch of teammates usually come into like one room. Somebody would bring like an Xbox or something, and you got Xbox going on one TV, and then you got another TV that's going with college football, watching game day, watching those games. And it's a good time just to bond and to build that brotherhood. You're not going to be with those guys forever, and so enjoy those moments that you have with them. And I think that was a huge aspect, especially in 2020, when not a lot of people could travel to games. Some games, for us, we didn't have anyone, and so that was all we did on game days. If we did a night game, hey, we were up, we're watching football the whole day, doing our meetings and stuff, and then, hey, a couple hours before we got to go to the stadium, let's lock back in, get our guys together, and let's get going.
For sure. Real quick, and I wanted to ask this and one other thing before we let you go. The first one is, I know we talked about, I think you said one of the best environments you went to was Ole Miss because of it was big crowd, they were there early, everything like that. So let's go with this question. Other than Kyle Field, what was the best stadium for away teams accommodations, and the worst? If you don't want to say which the stadium was the worst, you can just say what made it challenging. But what was what was the best as far as, space in the locker room and accommodations for the players? What was the best and the worst, and what were the positives and negatives of those two places?
Ooh, okay. I would say best accommodations would probably be, Mississippi State, they get you. Mississippi State, when we went there, they had just redone their home locker room and moved it to the other side of the field. And so we actually had their old home locker room.
Mm.
So we had, I mean, like the best facilities for an away team possible because it was their old home locker room. And so we had big locker room. Everybody had their big locker in there, nice showers, toilets, everything really great. The only bad part is that you got to hear cowbells for the next 4 hours and your ears are ringing after the game because of all those cowbells. The worst, and this team does it on purpose, is Auburn. Auburn had, and it's got to be a psychological thing. They take out all of the dividers between the toilets. And so you're going to sit on the toilet, you've got somebody right next to you, and there's nothing blocking the way there. And so I'm like, okay, that's kind of clever. Make it awkward for these guys as they're trying to use the restroom. Not a great away locker room. But that was something that stuck out to me like, they're kind of trying to play some games with us. I remember the LSU locker room was really, really tiny, right there underneath the tunnel, like tiny, tiny locker room. And then their showers was almost like they didn't have any plan for the ceiling. And so it was just pipes sticking out. And there's like 20 showers crammed into like one office sized room. And so that was always weird. Again, after the game, you're like, man, this is the tiniest locker room and definitely the tiniest, most crammed showers we've ever seen. So they kind of do things to almost mess with an opposing team. Now, I've been in the Kyle Field away locker room. During the spring game, our team was the one that had to go into the away locker room. I was like, can we at least like take out the side guards on the toilets or something? Can we make it difficult for these guys to come in here? I was like, we are the nicest, most spacious locker room that any team could come into. Like when a small New Mexico or New Mexico State comes and plays us, they're probably like, man, this is better than our home locker room. And I'm like, we got to do something to mess with these guys or rattle them. But I think the 12th man takes care of that just fine.
I will say I had the experience of being a visitor in the old Olsen Field locker room, and it's kind of one of those ones where you're like, is this like a planted thing or is this just a thing? There were dead bats everywhere, just in lockers on the floor, and you're like, there's bats around College Station, Kyle Field, and stuff like that. But like to the extent you're like, okay, so we just like took our gear into the dugout and just didn't even use the locker room whatsoever. So yeah,
I think that bats would probably keep me away from that locker room.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, one more thing real quick. I know we talked about a little bit before, and that is, Max, we talked a little bit earlier this season about what it's like going through a progression and how long do you have to hold the ball before a sack gets in there, and kind of some questions asked of Max Johnson in that regard this week about how do you know that fine balance between I got to try to make something happen here. There's the pocket's collapsing in around me. And he said that there are times when I know, listen, I have a little bit more time because if I take a sack here, it's just like an incomplete pass, or if I need to try to make something happen. From your perspective, what is that balance? And is there times when it's okay to take a sack?
So I hear what he's saying, and it kind of goes with Coach Fisher's philosophy. His philosophy is every possession ends with a kick. And that's something that he ends every single pregame speech with when he's going over the, hey, we need touchdowns in the red zone. We're not a field goal kicking team. And he says, most importantly, every possession ends with a, and then everyone repeats kick. Then he does it again. Every possession ends with a kick. And what he means by that is we always, best thing happens, we score. Our possession ends with a PAT. Second best thing, we get down to the red zone, we kick a field goal. Third best thing that could happen is we reserve the right to punt. And without turning the ball over, and I kind of think this is what Max was getting at, rather than forcing a pass in there, let's reserve that right to kick. Let's keep possession of that ball. It's okay if we do take a sack because we're not forcing an interception, giving them the ball right here. We can go flip the field and now punt this thing. Now, my rebuttal to that would be, hey, there are certain situations where, hey, you'd rather know where your guys are, throw an incomplete pass, throw it at the feet of the running back, get that ball out towards an out-breaking route, and just put it over his head to where he's in the area, and you can take an incompletion and not back up, from the sticks. Now, in a game scenario where it would be okay to take a sack would probably be, hey, we're running 4-minute offense. We're up, so we're not technically having to score points. We are up on a team. We're out of field goal range. You don't want sacks in the red zones. But if it was a third down and, hey, we're out of field goal range right now, we're not really going to go for it, even if we just get half of this, to a 4th and short. We're not really going to go for it. That might be a situation where, hey, it is okay to take a sack, because now the defense has to choose, are they going to take a timeout? Are they going to let the clock running? Or are they going to let the clock keep running? Or, really what's going to happen? You could use that strategically, kind of with taking a sack. Obviously, it's not ideal, but it can help you in that situation. And so other than that situation, I would say, hey, let's get that ball out of our hands and get it, to an out-breaking route over his head. Or if you got something underneath, try to just, dirt one to that guy in front of him. But I definitely understand where he's coming from in terms of a philosophy as an offense of reserving that right to kick every possession rather than giving the ball to the defense. And so as a quarterback, you've probably got about 2.4 seconds to make a decision. If you're holding on to that ball for over 3 seconds, you're asking those O-linemen to do a lot of hard work, and they're blocking some real good guys up front. And so I kind of understand where he's coming from, especially with the philosophy of Coach Fisher and reserving that right to kick, but would definitely like to see a little bit less sacks and get that ball out. I don't really care about completion percentage. We can talk adjusted completion percentage. That's a real thing, but in terms of completion percentage, hey, I'm fine with you throwing one, just dirting one right there, and give us another chance at those sticks. If it's 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 6, hey, I don't want to be in 4th and 14 where now we have to punt. I'm fine with the 4th and 6, and now we have a decision to make if we want to really go for this thing.
That's Nick Starkel, former Texas A&M quarterback, always with the good word on what's going on, X's and O's with football in general and with the Aggies. He's got practice to get to, so I need to get him out of here. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll be back next week with a little bit more, and be sure to check theeagle.com for continuing coverage leading up to that A&M game out at Ole Miss. Thanks, everybody.